Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to really dig into one specific source and see what surprising stuff shakes out. Today, we're jumping into gardening, specifically the zinnia plant. And we're doing it through the eyes of, well, the blog of a gardener named Ang. The post is called Zinnia's Bloom, A Gardener's Reflection. It's actually part 631 of their Notes on Gardening series, titled, So the Zinnia Finally Bloom. No, zinnias, right? Everyone says they're super easy for beginners, just throw them in, get loads of color. But Ang's story, it's a bit more complicated than that. We're going to look at why this supposedly simple flower was actually, kind of tricky for Ang. And importantly, what amazing gardening hack came out of the whole experience.
Yeah, exactly. Ang's personal take often bumps up against that, common wisdom. So this deep dive, it's really about exploring that gap between general advice and what actually happens on the ground for one person. We'll look at the specific conditions, the methods Ang used, the things that led to both frustration and some pretty cool breakthroughs. It's way more nuanced than just easy to grow.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What was Ang's basic gardening philosophy here?
It sounds like it was very hands-off. The source says basically only watering sometimes, absolutely zero fertilizer, and no pinching back the stems either. The thing you do to make plants bushier.
Right, none of that, which is pretty significant for zinnias. Even beginner advice usually suggests some feeding or maybe a pinch here or there to get more flowers. So Ang basically said, nope, let's see what happens if I just watch. Monitoring daily, but stepping back almost completely from interfering. It's like pushing the plant to show what it's really made of without all the usual help.
And Ang was apparently doubtful about their growth at first, which makes sense with that approach. But they did grow. The source mentions the seeds Ang harvested eventually bloomed maybe, 2 or 3 months after planting? Yeah, about 2 to 3 months. And actually, that timeline, it's pretty standard for zinnias, even with, regular care. So the fact Ang got blooms in that time frame with basically no help, that kind of tells you something about the plant's baseline toughness. It proves they are resilient, but it also sets us up to see what conditions are absolutely essential when you strip everything else away.
Okay, so given that minimalist care, where did things go right?
Ang did find a sweet spot, didn't they? Yeah, Ang noticed the plants did really well in a specific spot, a kind of microclimate that got at least 6 hours of full sunlight, very specific on the timing there. And that detail, at least 6 hours? That's gold. It's not just sun, it's sustained sun. Everyone knows zinnias like sun, sure, but Ang's observation really nails the importance of that consistent exposure. It really speaks to microclimates. Your garden isn't just one zone, right? It's got little pockets.
Yeah.
A bit more shade here, a bit windier there. Zinnias need tons of light for photosynthesis. That's what fuels those big blooms. So Ang's finding shows, okay, you can be hands-off with feeding, maybe, but you have to be hands-on with placement. Getting that sunlight baseline right is critical.
Makes sense. But it wasn't all sunshine and blooms, was it? There was a downside. Ang found the zinnias were quite susceptible to powdery mildew. Now, powdery mildew, that's that white dusty stuff on leaves, right?
Exactly. A common fungal thing.
Okay, but here's the surprising part, Ang noted. It happened even in a spacious area that lacked full sun exposure. You'd think more space equals better airflow, less mildew.
You would think so, wouldn't you? And that's what makes Ang's observation so sharp. Powdery mildew loves high humidity and still air. And the key factor, often overlooked, is that lack of direct sun. Sun helps dry off leaves really quickly after dew or rain, so even if an area seems spacious, if it doesn't get that good, strong, drying sunlight, it can stay damp and still right down at the leaf level. Perfect for fungus. So Ang's experience suggests that space alone isn't the answer. That direct sun is maybe even more important for keeping mildew away than just elbow room. It's all connected.
Right. The sun isn't just for growth, it's for drying too.
Right.
Interesting. So after weighing the sunny successes against these mildew struggles, what was Ang's final verdict on zinnias? Did they make the cut?
Well, Ang was pretty direct about it. The conclusion was, zinnias are not a good fit for my gardening style. Simple as that. And it really comes down to a few things, Ang pointed out. First, obviously, the whole hands-off gardening style itself. Zinnias, it seems, even easy ones, often do a bit better with some intervention, maybe to head off mildew or encourage more blooms, which Ang wasn't doing. Second, Ang mentioned the foliage pattern. Zinnia leaves can get quite dense, creating little humid pockets close to the stem.
Which links back to the mildew issue, especially without strong sun.
Exactly. And third, their status as annuals.
Meaning they only live for one season.
Right. And for some gardeners, putting effort into something that's gone by winter feels less rewarding than, say, planting perennials that come back year after year.
That makes sense. Of
Yeah.
those three reasons, the hands-off style, the foliage, them being annuals, which do you feel was the main driver for Ang? I feel like the hands-off part was the setup for everything else.
I think you've hit it right there. Yeah, the hands-off approach was the foundation. It kind of exposed the limitations related to the other points for Ang. Like, if Ang had been pinching or maybe using an organic spray, that dense foliage might not have mattered as much regarding mildew. And being an annual is just a fact of the plant, but it becomes a bigger deal when you're trying a minimal effort approach. Is the payoff worth it for just one season if they struggle a bit? So Aang basically showed, yeah, they can survive with minimal care, but maybe they don't thrive enough to earn their spot if your style is strictly hands-off. And for you listening, it brings up a good point. What's your style? Low-maintenance perennials? Or are you okay fussing a bit for big seasonal color from annuals?
Good question. But, okay, even though zinnias weren't Aang's cup of tea in the end, the whole experiment wasn't a waste, right? There was a really positive outcome. Something pretty major, actually.
Oh, absolutely not a waste. This is where it gets really interesting. The biggest win, the major positive takeaway, was this. Aang discovered that the approach of harvesting seeds from mature plants proved to be a great option for gardeners.
Wow, okay. And not just an option, but Aang found it gave a more reliable outcome than using seeds from commercial vendors.
Ah,
That's a big statement.
it really is. Finding that homegrown is actually better than store-bought, so why? Aang pointed to two main things. First, just the freshness of the seeds. Makes sense, right? Seeds straight off a healthy plant, used fairly soon, they're likely to be more viable, sprout better, and faster.
Okay, freshness counts. What was the other thing?
This is the really cool part. The local climate and conditions in which the parent plant thrived. Think about it. Seeds from a plant that already succeeded in your specific garden, they've essentially been field tested. They carry genetic adaptations suited to your soil, your light, your humidity levels.
So they're like pre-adapted.
Yeah.
Locally sourced genetics.
Exactly. It's like nature's custom breeding program happening right in your backyard. You're selecting for success in your unique microclimate. Commercial seeds are usually grown for broad adaptability, maybe losing some of that super local optimization. So for anyone listening, this suggests you could seriously boost your success by saving seeds from your own best plants. Create your own locally adapted strains.
That is fascinating. What a journey Aang had with these zinnias. It really shows how gardening is just this constant learning process. Even if the plant itself doesn't end up being a keeper for your style, like the zinnia for Aang, you can still learn something incredibly valuable. That seed harvesting insight is huge.
Totally agree. It highlights that core message. Experimentation, even with things that don't perfectly match your expectations, can lead to really practical, useful discoveries. Aang might skip the zinnias next year, but that seed-saving knowledge, that's a skill for life applicable to so many other plants. It just shows how experience, even the frustrating bits, is such a powerful teacher in the garden. Every season's a lesson.
What a fantastic exploration, pulling so much out of one gardener's notes. We saw the crucial need for that full, consistent sun for zinnias, the unexpected mildew challenges without it, and wow, that lesson about harvesting your own seeds for potentially better results. It really proves the value of just watching, observing, and trying things out in your own space. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive today.
And maybe a little something to think about for yourself. Looking back at your own gardening or maybe any learning experience, what apparent failures or detours have actually led you to your most valuable, surprising discoveries?
Something to chew on. Keep exploring, keep observing, and we'll catch you next time on the deep dive.